But worse still, a nation is doomed when its leaders are no longer afraid of the reaction of the people. The religious leaders of Israel at that time, the Pharisees and the chief priests, they wanted to arrest Jesus, but they were afraid of the people. It was only when they were able to manipulate the people that they eventually arrested Jesus and had him killed. Anytime a government is no longer afraid of its citizens, that nation is doomed. We can see what is happening in our country today. Who is afraid of who? Government? Afraid of you? Afraid of workers?
And that's what God is telling our Father in the Lord. If you decide to vote, if Tinubu wins, all of you are going into job. That is God has spoken. Just let it go live. Let it go live has spoken. Just we have said it. Let me say it in English so that they won't understand. Okay, sir.
If Nigerians vote for APC, Nigeria will sink. Tinubu in poverty, and the economy will be in shambles. If the government of APC continues, Nigeria will suffer extraordinary. I'm not in support of anybody. As a matter of fact, I don't vote, and I will never vote. I am telling you that we have never seen Archie before. Then this is when we now experience more Archie. We will be sick, the economy will be sick. I'm not saying anybody should.
My people, where is the lie in what this prophet said here? So he said this before the 2023 election, that if Tinubu, if Tinubu win that particular election, that the kind of suffer we will suffer in Nigeria, that we never see it. Is it not what we are experiencing right now? He even went ahead and said it in his own language so that his people will understand all this raw news. They will understand. But look at where we are today. Breaking news. The House of Representatives as well as the Senate finally approved the declaration of a state of emergency in Rivers State. Like, this is shocking, but not shocking anyway. I told you guys that it's going to be a thing of a surprise if at the end of the day that, House of Representatives and Senate, reject it. If you go to Twitter, Nigerians are kind of shocked, surprised, lamenting, shouting that democracy is gone, Nigeria is gone. Like, is it today that you guys know that we are not practicing democracy in Nigeria? Like, why is Nigeria so surprised, my people? Like, this is unbelievable. Even you people that are surprised, even surprising me. Despite what we saw in 2023, and some people are still surprised of what happened today in the House of Representatives and the Senate. So allegedly, we heard that, they gave each of the members there $25,000 in order to vote for this particular declaration. And at the end of the day, look at where we are. So it means now any president can wake up any day, any time, and remove or suspend any governor that he wished to. And this is what Dati Baba Ahmed said. If Nigerians want Tinubu in as a president of Nigeria, like, that will be the end of democracy. And that's what we have been seeing since Tinubu entered office. Like, there is no rule of law anymore. Like, they have turned the constitution upside down. Even some professors and the senior advocate of Nigeria that we have been respecting, like, this Tinubu government have exposed them all. Some will come on national television. They will not even have the courage to defend Tinubu. They will be trying, struggling, because they know very well that they are lying. Nigeria is upside down. And the people that are coming out today to cry, saying democracy is gone, Nigeria is gone. Like, I'm even surprised that you people are just realizing it. Right now, people have woken up to see like what is happening in Nigeria. So my people, let me allow you guys to listen to Barrister Enebeye Efong to see what he said concerning this matter, the declaration of a state of emergency in Rivers State.
In that clip we just saw, does the President's declaration of a state of emergency in Rivers State fully comply with the provisions of Section 305 of the 1999 Constitution, or is it overstretching its bounds? And what do you make of Mr. Lateef Fagbemi's comments about its constitutionality?
Let me start by the comments you have just heard made by the Honorable Attorney General of the Federation, who by virtue of Section 150 of our Constitution is the Chief Law Officer of the Federation and Minister of Justice. Lateef Fagbemi, for many lawyers in our country, is a practitioner who has distinguished himself, having prosecuted high-profile cases from lower courts all the way to the Supreme Court, distinguished himself over the decades. I know that many lawyers in our country look up to him. And when he was appointed as the Attorney General, some of us had some form of expectation that, okay, because he's not coming from a partisan background, he was a core professional, maybe we will see for the first time in a while an Attorney General who, when the situation arises, may be able to speak as a professional, devoid of the partisan leaning that his predecessors were confronted with. But the comments he has made is quite disappointing, coming from the Attorney General of the Federation.
Which specific comments?
First, for the AGF to insinuate that Governor Fubara instigated the bombing of the pipeline. If they have an intelligence, if there's an intelligence report before the president, or evidence before the president, showing that Governor Fubara had a hand in the blowing of the pipeline, they should come out and say so. But to say that he had told his supporters that when it is time, he will lead from the front, which by my own construction is simply saying, when it is time for us to fight or protest, I'll be part of it. To now construe that to mean that it is the governor who blew the pipeline, or it's the governor who sent militants to blow the pipeline, is the worst act of mischief.
You said the governor didn't make statements to come.
How many crimes in Nigeria has Tinubu condemned or spoken about? Since Tinubu was sworn in on the 29th of May, almost 2 years ago. How many acts of vandalism in our country has Tinubu spoken about? The women that have been killed, farmers that have been killed in Ondo State now. Protest was taking place yesterday. Has Tinubu come out to address it? Should we now say that it's Tinubu that is sponsoring the killing in Ondo State? The killings we are seeing across the north. Has Tinubu spoken about it? So if the yardstick is now that when a crime takes place in a state and the governor of that state does not come out to condemn it, the governor is liable. Is it Fubara that appointed the Inspector General of Police? Is it Fubara that has control over the Chief of Naval Staff, the Chief of Air Staff, the Chief of Defense Staff, the Chief of Army Staff? Is it Tinubu that awarded pipeline protection contract? So, sorry, Fubara. Is it Fubara? Is it the governor? Or is it saying that Fubara should have carried an AK-47 to protect the pipeline? This is a baseless statement by the learned Attorney General, quite unfortunately. And let's even assume for a second that Fubara has a hand in the blowing of the pipeline. That does not justify his suspension. He still has the constitutional immunity. Otherwise, he'll be saying that a governor or a president who is involved in crime should be suspended. And that will make, if Tinubu is now tired, if the Attorney General is now tired of the immunity provision under Section 308 that some of us have been opposed to, he should come out and say so. And he has to start with his point of the president.
Okay, so
but you cannot say that because you suspect that the person entitled to immunity is involved in crime, that will give you the power to remove the person. That is completely untenable.
So, I mean, part of the arguments we've seen for and against this action, some would say that there's no clear-cut explanation of, or there's no clear provision in the Constitution that gives the president the power to be able to suspend a democratically elected governor. But there are also people who would argue that, you know, there might seem to be a lacuna in the explanation in the Constitution regarding what should happen when there's a state of emergency. So I want you to run us through, you know, your thoughts in that regard.
No, I disagree with the proposition that there is a lacuna in the Constitution on this matter. I will submit to you that, on the contrary, the wordings, the intent of the framers of the Constitution, the wordings of Section 305, and the intent of the framers of our Constitution are quite explicit. I submit that before we even speak about whether the president has power to suspend an elected governor, an elected deputy governor, and elected members of the House of Assembly, there is no circumstance in Rivers State that justifies the declaration of an emergency. Yes, the president has power under Section 305 to declare an emergency. But does it fall within any of the circumstances permissible? I'll refer you to Section 305, sub 3 of the Constitution. I can even read it out briefly. The circumstance that the president shall have power to issue a proclamation of a state of emergency only when A, the federation is at war. The Nigerian Federation is not at war. B, the federation is in imminent danger of invasion or involvement in a state of war. That is certainly not the case. See, there is actual breakdown of public order and public safety in the federation or any part thereof, to such extent as to require extraordinary measure to restore peace and security.
And does the pipeline, the explosion of the pipelines, does it not fall under the category?
An actual breakdown of public order and public safety in the federation or any part thereof. Is there an actual breakdown of law and order in Rivers State? Are schools not functioning in Rivers State? Are markets not running smoothly in Rivers State? Are civil servants not going to work? Are taxi drivers not doing their businesses? Are courts not sitting? Before this proclamation was made, can you show me any indication that activities were not running in Rivers State smoothly?
And one of the arguments they used as antecedents, they said this happened twice in a democratic administration under former President Obasanjo, and you know, the lawyers and the NBA, they didn't test the constitutionality of this. So Mr. Obasanjo got away with this. So therefore, it's it's open season, and President Tinubu has done the same thing. So
I was just concluding on the point that even on the basis of Section 305, I haven't seen anything that justifies declaring a state of emergency in Rivers State. I have not. People are not being slaughtered on the streets. And you cited the Obasanjo example. Who is General Obasanjo? Is a general, he served as the military head of state, and you don't expect someone who was in the military, someone who benefited or staged a coup to become president, to now say that the only language he understands is different from what he did. This sole administrator thing is an invention of the military. Are you surprised that even the person Tinubu has appointed, President Tinubu has appointed, Vice Admiral Ibok, is someone with a military background? Why do you think it is so? Nigerians should ask for a second, why is it that every time a sole administrator is appointed, including the one that President Obasanjo appointed in Plateau State, it was a military general, why is it always a military person? Because the very idea of removing a democratically elected institution or person is a...
Yeah, but these are retired military personnel.
He's still a military officer, whether retired or serving.
Now, what do you say to people that say, you know, president of the country, commander-in-chief, is responsible for the security and lives of Nigerians? Therefore, he anticipated, because of the lack of cooperation between the members of the State House of Assembly and the governor, and the ups and downs, the word of the type of language, the rhetorics that was used, that what he did was to prevent, because he anticipated that all of this was going to come to a head, a very violent head. So in order to prevent this from happening, he's been proactive. He's been proactive.
So just to add some context to that as well, since we're looking at
there is nothing proactive about what
Section 305 has done. Section 305 subsection 3 paragraph E says there's an occurrence, and it's, running through the options, it said there's an occurrence or imminent danger or the occurrence of any disaster or natural calamity affecting the community of a section or a section of the community in the federation.
Yes.
So can they argue that maybe the possibility?
Imminent.
Yes, imminent.
When did the imminency arise?
Well, maybe days before or a day before the proclamation.
When did the imminence? There has to be either an actual breakdown of law and order or an imminent breakdown of law and order.
Pipeline vandalism.
But how about the one in Bayelsa? Why has the Bayelsa state governor not been suspended?
All right.
You cannot have it both ways. Since Tinubu became president, thousands of Nigerians have been killed across the north and other part of the country. Why has Tinubu not suspended himself? You cannot say that because there's a security breach in a state, the governor of that state has to be removed, and the security breach all throughout the country, and the president is still in office. And who gave him the power to remove a governor? Because by virtue of our constitution, section 180 is clear on tenure of office of governor. You read it along with section 189. There are 4 clear instances where the tenure of office of a governor can be truncated either permanently or by other means, and that is by reason of death. Fubara is alive. Guess what? Governor Fubara is not dead, he's alive. The deputy governor is not dead, he's alive. Members of the assembly are alive. Resignation. I've not seen Fubara's resignation letter. I don't know if Tinubu has seen it.
No, not yet.
Permanent incapacitation, section 189. That is where the governor is so sick, and the medical board set up by the State Executive Council,
and he has not yet been impeached.
And then it is examined and shown that he can no longer discharge his duties, and he has his medical practitioner in that board, and then they reach a conclusion that he's now permanently incapacitated. And the cabinet can vote to remove him.
Okay,
The other one is impeachment, section 188.
Which is what they've been
None of this has happened.
All right.
None of this has happened. So who gave Tinubu the power to remove the head of a subnational government?
We'll come to talk about what the options are, if there are any options again, the remedies. But let's bring in Nyesom Wike into the conversation. Some of the arguments we've seen will be people saying that Nyesom Wike, that the president has been unfair in the sense that he's leveling punishment to Fubara and the rest, but has left Nyesom Wike to go scot-free. Do you think that Nyesom Wike should have been suspended or retired? And it seems that with the way that he's carried along, many will say that he's more powerful than his political party, and in some sense, maybe he has the government under control. These are some of the statements we're hearing, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
Tinubu is not a disinterested party in this crisis. I read Fubara's statement, and I was amazed. He's still talking about the president with so much deference. I'm not saying the governor should not respect the president. But come of it, you are the head of a federative unit. You are the chief executive officer of a state. The head of a national government has removed you as the head of a subnational government. You are still saying, Mr. President, Mr. President. Tinubu has taken sides. He has never been neutral in this crisis. In which universe does a president tell a governor that commissioners who have publicly expressed their opposition to the appointer resign from your cabinet because they are aligning with your predecessor, that you must bring them back to the cabinet? Whereas under the constitution, and those who are saying Tinubu is trying to respect which constitution are they talking about? Under the constitution, guess what? The power to appoint a commissioner is gubernatorial. Only the governor can exercise it. And you have already interfered with the power of the governor to do that. You have interfered with the power of the governor to present budget. You have interfered with the power of the governor to even do it. In fact, they even insisted that not only should he recall the commissioners, they must be returned to their former
position. Why do you say that President Tinubu is not an interested
to their
party?
Former ministries, the ministries they occupied. The Attorney General, former Attorney General of Rivers State, who had basically tried to frustrate the governor in court, you say you must bring him back as Attorney General. All the conditions that Tinubu said, only Fubara, everything was Fubara. Where is Nyesom Wike? It's just, guess what? I saw a video yesterday on his Twitter, and guess what? Wike is still minister. He has not been suspended. So this is the person that Tinubu has power to suspend because he appointed him.
But the Attorney General defended him yesterday.
Of course, because he's his party man.
I mean, he's a member of the PDP.
Who?
Yes, on Wike.
On record, officially.
Yes.
But we are not stupid. We know more than that.
Let's look at the broader implication of
I'm saying that nobody should be deceived that Tinubu is trying to resolve this as the father of the nation.
So why is he interested in this? Because you said
because Rivers people voted against him. He has to punish them. APC lost Rivers State in 2023. The evidence is there. APC lost Rivers State. And this is also about 2027.
APC lost Lagos too. Why is it not punishing Lagos?
Why is it not punishing Lagos? Because Sanwo-Olu is the governor.
Now let's look at the broader implication of this. Your grouse is with Section 305.
This is malicious. Rivers people rejected APC. Let us deal with them. Maybe it's also about the allocation of the state in the light of the announcement yesterday.
Do you think that there's also a 2027 plan in the picture?
Of course, because Rivers people will still vote against APC. I believe most Nigerians will still vote against APC. This is about putting structures ahead of the next election. It has nothing to do with, because if you truly want to stop this crisis, one phone, 10 minutes conversation between Tinubu and Wike would have ended this.
Now let's look at the broader implication of Nigerian politics, because we've seen a situation where the president has removed a democratically elected governor, and most lawyers are saying, look, this is illegal, and the danger is that if the president doesn't like an opposition governor, he can remove him at the flimsiest excuse of a crisis. So as lawyers and as interested parties, what can civil society do to prevent this sort of judicial recklessness, as some have termed it?
Executive recklessness.
Executive recklessness, as some have termed it, to prevent such a situation from reoccurring in the future?
I'm not sure some Nigerians even understand the severity of what has happened. You know, in this country, sometimes we make deception a state policy. Under Section 2 of the Constitution, guess what? It says Nigeria shall be a federation. You can fact check me. Consisting of states and the Federal Capital Territory. In a federal system of governments, the subnational government or the federating units are independent, they're autonomous. They don't have to follow the direction of the government at the center. Now, if Tinubu has the power to remove or suspend Fubara for 6 months, there will be nothing to stopping him from waking up tomorrow to suspend the 36 state governors. All he simply has to do is to manufacture a non-existent excuse, as he has done in Rivers. Because as I earlier explained, based on Section 305 sub 3, there is no factor secondary the Rivers.
Why have we left it up to this point? After Obasanjo did it twice, why didn't we address this issue constitutionally?
Unfortunately, there was an attempt to address it, but it failed. There was a lawsuit filed by the late Sage, Professor Ben Mabweze. I read the judgment again last night, just to be sure that I'm on the right course, where there was a case filed between Plateau State of Nigeria and Attorney General of the Federation. After that emergency was declared by Obasanjo, an action was filed at the Supreme Court. Quite unfortunately, the Supreme Court refused. In fact, I read the comments of the justices. The lead judgment was read by Honorable Justice Legbo Kutugi, who later became CJN. And I read these 7 justices. They all expressed their sadness that they lost an opportunity to pronounce on the merit of the question, whether a president, while declaring an emergency, had the power to remove a governor. But if you read some of the orbital comments they made, the justices were not happy about it. They were saying indirectly that no, that can never be tolerated.
So does this then present an opportunity?
Why that pronouncement was not made, and I hope Fubara doesn't make that mistake, was that the Supreme Court said, well, you had been suspended. So how could you bring an action on behalf of a state when you had no actual authority to authorize that suit to be filed? That was the singular reason on which the action was struck. The case of technicality was struck out, because the man who was sole administrator came out to say he did not authorize the bringing of the suit on behalf of Plateau State, because at that time, whether you like it or not, he was the one that had power to do so. It was on that basis that the Supreme Court refused to go into the merit of the case. That is why those who are saying Fubara should go to the Supreme Court, they are wrong. This is not a matter for the Supreme Court. Yes, governors of other states can do that through the attorney generals, okay? And then under Section 20 of the Supreme Court Act, an action brought pursuant to the regional judicial of the Supreme Court under section 232 of the Constitution, must be brought in the name of the Attorney General. But in the Plateau's case, they did not bring it in the name of the Attorney General. Okay? Even though some of the justices said, well, since it is a state that is a party to the regional jurisdiction, therefore there is nothing wrong with that. But that was something that could have been avoided. So on technical and procedural grounds, there was no definite pronouncement. But we don't even need a court to pronounce on it. Guess what? The man that is the commander-in-chief today, if you recall, in year 2013, deprecated Jonathan for declaring emergency. He also condemned Obasanjo, that Obasanjo had no power to remove.
Even though Jonathan didn't remove the governors.
Jonathan did not remove the governor.
He did not suspend the governor.
Guess what? People will say it's because you don't like Tinubu, that is why you are saying this. You can fact check it. In 2014, I actually wrote an article on this matter titled, Before you remove those governors, state of emergency, before you remove those governors. The argument I'm putting forward now, 10 years after, I am sure that I still have to argue this. There is no circumstance under the law that the president can suspend a governor. So the day that is allowed to happen, we can kiss our democracy goodbye.
Unfortunately, that has happened now. So what remedies are there? Is there any remedy for Fubra? Is there any remedy for the people of Rivers State?
It is left for the members of the National Assembly, Senate and House of Reps, to decide where they want to stand, where they want history, what they want history to remember them for. If they allow this travesty to stand beyond today, then shame on them.
And do you have faith in the current assembly to...
I don't, but I hope they have faith in themselves. I don't have faith in them. Akpabio is the Senate President. He was my governor for 8 years. The only thing that Akpabio would not do for Tinubu is to remove himself as Senate President. Every other thing Akpabio will do. I know who this man is. So I don't, maybe at the House of Reps, but at the Senate, you may have more support for it at the Senate because Akpabio is the Senate President. And he's the man I can write book for. In several volumes, I can write book about. Akpabio doesn't. So people say, "Oh, Tinubu does not like opposition." Have you met Gosil Akpabio? Have you met Akpabio? You say, "Oh, Tinubu does not allow people to." Have you met Akpabio? In the world that Akpabio exists, the only rule that stands is what Akpabio says. So I suspect that there may be more support in the Senate. But let us not trivialize the matter or personalize it. They themselves must have a recent of history. Akpabio was the governor for 8 years. Would he have allowed the president to suspend him? He was the governor of my state for 8 years, from 2007.
All right.
Would he allow a president to suspend him? The National Assembly has to stop this. The PDP has to file an action in court to challenge this because it's governor that has been removed.
What are the attorney generals?
Of the states, yes. I've heard yesterday from reliable sources.
Maybe one of the PDP governors
have instructed the attorney generals to file a suit at the Supreme Court.
Now, just before we go, looking at the current situation, Vice Admiral Ibok retired, was sworn in yesterday as a sole administrator, and they've said, the federal government has said, allocation will be released to Rivers State. What budget is the sole administrator going to disburse this
funds or work
with this monies?
The Vice Admiral Ibok is an impostor. He's unknown to law. He's unknown to the Constitution of Nigeria. I don't recognize him. He's not the governor of Rivers State. And before I even go to that, the other point I wanted to highlight is Section 11 of our Constitution. You can look at Section 11. Under Section 11 of our Constitution, where a House of Assembly is unable to carry out or discharge its legislative responsibility, do you know what is supposed to happen? The National Assembly is empowered temporarily to exercise the legislative functions of the House. But you know what? That is why people are saying, oh, lacuna. I said there is no lacuna. Assuming that there is even crisis in Rivers State that the House cannot perform, the National Assembly should have intervened. And in doing that, two things, please, quickly, two things. Number one, the Constitution says they shall not have power to remove the governor or deputy governor. Number two, insofar as the House is still able to sit, then you cannot say they are unable to discharge their responsibility. So assuming that
so what about the National Executive Council?
It is called Federal Executive Council, not Federal Legislative Council. The Federal Executive Council under our Constitution consists of the President, Vice President, ministers, maybe the Secretary of the Government of the Federation and the Chief of Staff. Yes, ministers. So they are people that are working with the President. It is just like State Executive Council.
It's an executive body.
So who gave President Tinubu the power to say he wants to make regulation for Rivers State?
That provision is not in the Constitution?
No!
Okay.
They don't have that power.
On the issue of allocation.
On the issue of allocation, I think this is where Nigerians must now be unanimous. And I challenge anybody. I'll be interested in hearing a lawyer say that I'm wrong. By virtue of section 120 and 121 of our constitution, no governor nobody under any name or guise can appropriate 1 kobo belonging to a state without an appropriation law. And guess what? To see the hypocrisy, to see how sinister, how diabolical this action is, Tinubu in his broadcast to the station said that Fubara has not complied with the judgment of the Supreme Court. One of the reasons why the Supreme Court said that the allocation of River State should be withheld was because, according to the Supreme Court, there can be no government of a state without a House of Assembly. And that Fubara did not recognize the House of Assembly, did not present the budget.
And yet he's now fired.
Wait now, this one is common sense. You don't need to be a lawyer.
They'll say it's on their emergency.
No, you don't need to be a lawyer. You are saying there is no House of Assembly. You did not present a budget. Now you have suspended the same House of Assembly. You have gone ahead to suspend the governor and deputy governor, and you now want to release that same allocation. You say Fubara did not present budget. Who will Vice Admiral Ibe present his own budget to, assuming it's even known to law? Under which budget will they now spend the withhold allocation? This is the travesty
it's an emergency situation.
So, very quickly on the final note, people who say that Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan's case was a test for Nigerians and that because they could see that, that could easily fly, that's why this is happening in Rivers State. Is that a thought process that should
I feel sad for Natasha, but I think I probably underestimated her. I've met Natasha at least once at a civil society gathering many years ago in Abuja. Go and look at her fight in that Jekuta steel. This woman is not a pushover. I think Akpabio is easily underestimated this woman. And it is sad that Nigerians have not stood up for her the way I expected. That women groups have not stood up for her, but I'm not surprised. She's fighting a monstrosity. She's fighting forces that have a lot of resources. And look at that is why people are saying, oh, Senator, how many of them even stood up? And it is sad in our country that those who are pretending to be in the opposition, from the minority leader of the Senate, to the minority whip, to the members of the Labour Party in the Senate, the PDP, the NNPP, not one of them had the courage. They pretend to be men. Most of them say they are men. Their masculinity could not be found. Not one of them could stand up to speak for this woman. She has been suspended. I don't know why they're obsessed with 6 months. Well, Natasha was suspended for 6 months. You are now suspending Fubara for 6 months. We may wake up tomorrow, Tinubu has suspended Nigerians, expelled Nigerians for 6 months.
Wouldn't it be great if they can now adjust the duration of presidency for another 6 months? That's it, right?
Shamras in News TV. Home of it.